My grandfather was a big, broad-shouldered man who did everything he could to make us welcome in his home after my family ran into trouble and had nowhere else to go. His hospitality to us was especially remarkable because this was the early 50s, the height of the Cold War, and his son-in-law, my father, was a radical. People told Grandfather we were outsiders who made him look bad, but Grandfather would just smile and keep his own counsel. Sometimes, watching him come up the stairs from the basement or walk by and give me a smile, I'd wonder what we had in common. He was tall and strong. I was short and unathletic. He loved coarse rye bread. I wanted dessert and nothing else. He liked to keep a little garden in the back. I wouldn't even eat a grape if it had seeds. He loved to tinker and mend what was broken. I wanted everything new and ready-made. He read books in Yiddish, Polish, and Hebrew, and when everything was going well, would say in Russian, "Всё хорошо," everything's okay. After all my family had been through, the last thing I wanted to be thought of was different. One day in class, a Polish exchange student mispronounced the word sword, and I was the first to laugh. One afternoon, toward the middle of my sophomore year in high school, this big, strong man had a stroke. One minute he was talking to a friend, arranging to cut some lumber. The next, he was down on the sidewalk, unable to speak or move. When he left the hospital, he needed constant care. Mother found a nursing home a short walk away, and we'd see him every day. Sometimes he'd recognize us and cheerfully ask how we'd been. But more and more, he'd speak in Russian or Yiddish or Polish, the languages of his youth. Once, I think he mistook me for a Tsarist police officer and turned his head away, refusing to talk at all. I was embarrassed by his emotion. He would weep and tremble, and sometimes cry in fear, till one day I realized he had slipped away from us completely and was reliving the pogroms, the suffering, and the intolerance of times in Russia that made the 50s here tame in comparison. Then, even though people were looking, I'd hold his hand and, like some emissary from his future in America, try to call him back. "Grandfather," I'd whisper, "Всё хорошо, всё хорошо." I didn't know if he heard me or drew any comfort from my voice. He just got smaller and smaller on that bed, consumed by the struggle that apparently had always been at the core of who he was. He died a few weeks later, looking as old as time. I didn't mention his death to anyone in school. This wasn't a parent, just a grandparent, and I was still too young to know what the connection between us really was. More and more, though, as I get older, the memory of him draws me across time. I can see his eyes on me, never criticizing, never laying down any rules, just welcoming us and all our differences into his home, seeing, I suspect, what I was then too young to see, past the differences between us, to the similarities. Lately, I received some pictures of him from Mother. I look at him, the day of his wedding, almost a century ago, about to start the journey from Russia that would take him across the sea from what he'd known to what he knew not of, and realize, with amazement and a sense of homecoming, how much I now look like him.